Let's Sports.
Good evening. Welcome to the NUFC360 podcast live on YouTube this evening. And we are looking back at the 2025 summer transfer window for Newcastle United. The window closed about 25 minutes ago, so Newcastle are done for the summer. And whatever squad we've got now is what we're going to have until January. And I'm delighted this evening to be joined by Tig, Rob, Daz, and a very special guest in Andy Smith, Sixsmith, Premier League broadcaster, and of course, big Newcastle fan as well. So how are you all doing, gentlemen?
Good. How are you?
Happy to have the window over, yeah? Happy to have the window over.
Relieved.
It's been
relieved.
Yes.
It's been a strange one, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So
You can say that again.
Can I just thank you straight away out of the traps there, mate, for not saying the window slammed shut. Because if I ever hear that phrase again, honest to God, it does matter completely. But yeah,
technically it hasn't shut because there's still, you can have the deal sheet.
There's still deal sheets going on,
because I think that's where we're at with the current situation with Vissa as well. So it hasn't been rubber stamped.
I think Vissa's done. But equally, so what? So let's have a look at Newcastle's business. Vissa is done. Newcastle have signed Anthony Elanga, Aaron Ramsdale, Malik Chow, Jacob Ramsey, Nick Waltemada, and Yuan Vissa. Of course, we will have to get onto the exits at some point, but I think we can ignore them for now. Let's focus on the actual incomings and the players who actually want to be at Newcastle United and not the players who don't want to be at Newcastle United. So if we're looking at there, £252 million spent. Obviously, the net spend will be a lot lower. But I mean, you know, there's been a lot of noise about Newcastle's transfer window from numerous media outlets. I think the perception has been it's been bad. I think actually when you look at it now, that the dust has settled on it, I think Newcastle have had a good transfer window. And what it certainly was looking like it was going to be, it has totally changed. So I will open the floor up to, first of all, you know, Andy, how were your thoughts on the window as a whole and also like the players who come in the end?
I think we should just compare it to where Newcastle were a month ago. I mean, Newcastle a month ago, there was the whole talk about Alexander Isak, obviously, that started to erupt. Obviously, it was, 2 weeks ago about the social media statement that was made, if you want to call it a statement. And bearing in mind that Newcastle at that point had brought in Alanga, had Aaron Ramsdale in, were just about to get Malik Chow, I think, over the line at that particular stage. It was shaping up to be a pretty, 5 out of 10 window. Obviously, there was the early disruption with Paul Mitchell leaving the club as well. And I'm going to mention something straight away that I'll probably just keep referring back to throughout this podcast. So I apologise to every single listener. I apologise to all 4 of you as well. But what Eddie Howe has done in this window is nothing short of bloody remarkable. He's a Premier League manager that is also taking on about 2 or 3 different other roles. And I can't, for the life of me, and you guys who are much more educated in football might be able to help me out here, but I can't think of another manager, certainly not in the Premier League, possibly not in Europe, that could have done the job that Eddie Howe has certainly done in terms of keeping the squad together, tight-knit, harmonious, but then getting the targets that he has chased for quite a while over the line, obviously with the help of Andy and Steve Nixon and the other guys behind the scene naturally too. I think he's done an incredible job over the last 2 or 3 months because it could have easily turned into a horror of a transfer window, this for Newcastle United. It was starting to get a little bit that way, and it's been turned around, I personally think, into a really, really good transfer window. Maybe just one player short of being an absolute ideal transfer window, certainly.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that is probably the way to look at it, especially like when you think about, as you said, where we were a month ago, it looked like it was actually looking like it was going to be a pretty terrible transfer window in the end. And look, what's happened obviously is Yasser Al-Ramayan has stepped in, hasn't he, clearly, and PIF have got much more involved. And since they have got much more involved, the speed of the deals has been something else. I mean, Jacob Ramsey was done in, 2 days? Nick Waltemada, that was unbelievable. I mean, what a great Friday night that was.
Talk about this, by the way. Thursday night, I'm sat watching the Champions League draw with my fiancée, Rebecca.
Yes.
And honest to God, I was really looking forward to it because I'll say this right now. I wanted Barcelona so bad at St. James's Park because a repeat of 1997 would be better. And literally as soon as the Barcelona draw was made, I had a text from someone saying, there's news going to be coming out very, very shortly that Newcastle are in for a German striker and he's going to be done. He's going to be finished. And I'm not a transfer journalist, thank God, because I can't do the job. Like Keith, I don't know how that man is still standing at the end of his transfer window because of the amount of work he's bloody well put in. I think he's going to be away for the next 3 weeks on leave, probably, on bed.
Probably just having a lie down.
No, just having a lie down.
Yeah, probably. But it was one of those where you're like, this comes out, and then I think it was Craig broke the story as an example. Far down in an article about Voltemada. That's the pronunciation. We're not calling him Voldemort. We're not calling him Voltmaid or whatever the hell else anyone's called him. Voltemada's the one. And literally, I'm like, for blooming heck's sake, can we not just enjoy the Champions League draw while there's another bit of news coming out? Just give it an hour. And then it's literally Thursday night fee agreed, terms agreed. Friday night medical, he was obviously on Tyneside on Thursday night and Dakota on the King side. And then Saturday it gets announced on the morning. I mean, that's how you do a transfer. That is how you
did the game against Leeds as well. He was in the crowd.
And he was there,
yeah. And that's a club record deal for Newcastle as well. And especially at the time, it looked like all the talk was about the Strand Larsen. 2 bids were being rejected for Strand Larsen. But at the same time, Newcastle had somehow kept the talk secret.
Sorry, I'm just laughing. Yeah. Just come up here. Keith's actually 21 years old. All the great comes from Newcastle. It's all true. Keith is about 10 years younger than me.
That's Stephen.
I was
he's one part of our podcast.
I was at Sam Fender in Belfast on the Thursday night, and there's actually a Newcastle fella fan behind me, and he turns around to me and he goes, "They just signed Voltemada." I turn around and I'm like, "All right, yeah, go on, mate, jog on, like go get that drink out of your mouth because you're chatting, you're waffling." And he goes, "No, I swear to God," and he showed me a screenshot, and it was from his mate. I don't know why he did it like that rather than just getting it up himself, but that's what it was. And it looked real shady, and I was like, "Great, okay, yeah, whatever." Check my own phone. There's Fabrizio. And I'm like, these rumors didn't exist 20 minutes ago while I was in the bathroom. And now he's here. He's on his way. Like,
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And you know what? It's a really good point to make. But how quickly they did that. Now, don't get me wrong. Every transfer cannot happen like that because obviously there's a lot of things to follow. And I know people might look from the outside and say, well, hang on a minute. If we did it for Voltemada, why can't we do that for every single signing? Why didn't we just do that for Wissa? Like, it's a completely different situation. There's a lot of things to fall in. But honestly, I think that shows what Newcastle are capable of when there's a transfer and when certain conditions are met, i.e., the club are happy to sell to a certain extent, given the fee. The player really wants to come. I don't think it was made enough of how much Nick Voltemada wanted to come to Newcastle, wanted to test himself. Certainly the people I spoke to out in Germany who have covered German football, who covered Germany in the under-21 Euros in the summer, said what was surprising is how much he wants to go and test himself at Newcastle. I think in his statement, he talked about the atmosphere and watching St. James's Park on TV. So for anyone who thinks that St. James's Park atmosphere is great for a match day, but it doesn't do anything else, so far wrong. Literally, there are players like Voltemada, like Tony Cross, who are watching Newcastle games and being like, this is incredible. I want a piece of this. Voltemada did that, and it was so refreshing to hear him.
New NUFC member Tony Cruz as well, by the way. He wants to be a member now, doesn't he?
He does.
He does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know he was.
I love that. Watching a Newcastle game.
To the fact.
Carry on.
He was alluding on Twitter to the fact that he might have helped convince sign Chow and Voltemada. Someone posted, Tony Kroos has done this, and it translates to this can't all be a coincidence.
Oh, Tony, hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't
Tony Kroos. What's next?
It got him some likes on his tweets, didn't it? And it got him tens of thousands of Newcastle followers. So I think another one was interesting was Chow, because he turned down Bayern Munich. Manchester United came in for him late on as well. But he was convinced by Eddie and Newcastle. And I think with Chow, Newcastle have looked at him for 3 years probably. Had a look at him a bit more last summer, but have been tracking him for a long time. And then eventually the deal, popped up. And again, that one was done really quickly as well. And I feel like as much as at the start of the window, all those jokes about rejection FC, all these rejection 11s and stuff, what Newcastle have actually ended up with is lots of players who've turned down other clubs to come here. Yeah. And ultimately, yes, didn't get Liam Delap, didn't get João Pedro, didn't get, Brian Mbeumo or whatever. But what they have got is they've got some extremely talented footballers who actually want to be at Newcastle and will give everything for the badge, clearly already.
The points to make about that, must be absolutely crap to be a Bayern Munich fan, just getting beaten to every signing by Newcastle United.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And then just
Bolton
drop
was
70 million
rejected
on
as well.
Nicholas Jackson, by the way.
I know.
70
Well,
million on
yeah,
Nicholas
there was
Jackson.
that, wasn't it? I mean, I'm so devastated that Newcastle aren't playing Bayern Munich in the Champions League, because that would be an absolutely class game, wouldn't it?
That would be
Voltemada, Chow, etc. But just to pick up on your point there, Jack, what you were saying is these are players. The theme of the transfer window for me, and I won't talk about the obvious theme, the saga that has been going on in terms of the striking department. But the theme of the transfer window for me are these players that Newcastle have brought in are players that Eddie Howe has been looking at ever since he became Newcastle United manager, or shortly after maybe. You go through them. Anthony Elanga. First, we're interested in him a good couple of transfer windows, 3-4 transfer windows ago even. Aaron Ramsdale, a player obviously Eddie Howe brought to the Premier League, trusts implicitly. Literally, I spoke to Aaron pre-season, and the things that he was saying about Eddie Howe were just incredible in terms of how he kept in touch with him all the way through his career, kept asking him if he was being a good dad, looking after his son and looking after his wife and everything like that, which is another story entirely. Then you move on to Jacob Ramsey, Malik Chow, the same. Nick Voltemada, they've had eyes on him for quite some considerable time. It just seemed like he was Bayern Munich bound at the start of the season. But Munich, I think there's an element of them stuffing that up ever so slightly as well, without being in the know. 3 bids for him, incremental bids as well. They obviously missed out. Newcastle slipped in and got him. So these are players that Eddie Howe has tracked for an awful long time. And it's becoming a constant theme at Newcastle. It was the same with Anthony Gordon, of course, as well. Alex Isak was one of those for definite too. Sandro Tonali is someone that Eddie Howe's always been interested. These are players that he's scouted over years, not 10 weeks, not a year or whatever. It's been a while and he's chased them hard. So equally, and I'll stop ranting in a second, while it's very important to say that the players want to come to Newcastle United, which is massive. Liam Delap, fair play, wanting to go to Chelsea. João Pedro, the same. Brian and Burma wanting to go to Manchester United. Can't knock them for it. That's what they want to do. No problem. Crack on and do it. But my big thing was that Eddie Howe wanted those players. These guys weren't just fallback options. These were players that Eddie Howe has been wanting for a while, and these are the players that Eddie Howe has got. And I think you've all seen it, as every single Newcastle United fan has seen it, what Eddie Howe can do to a player on a training pitch. And I'm very, very intrigued and excited to see what he can do with the latest cohort this summer.
I think, it's a really good point. So, I mean, Daz, to be fair, right? I don't know how you feel about the same thing, but for me, whenever we sign a player now, no matter what the price is or whatever the perception of that player is, I always feel like they're going to be good, because we've seen this evidence that every single player Newcastle have signed, apart from the odd 1 or 2, don't really work. Do you kind of feel the same way?
No, I totally agree. And I believe that, I think that we first looked at Chow similar time to when we were interested in Botman as well. And so he targets players, and he very rarely goes off piste. Once he sees them, he knows them, he wants them. We know how in depth he scouts them himself, not just people around him. So when he focuses on a player, he tends to get them in. And we can see that the players that stay around the first team squad, that he wants around the first team squad. And what has been detrimental in the past in terms of the size of the squad that we've had. So when we've had injuries, it hasn't worked out well for us. But every player, bar, as you said, Jack, maybe 1 or 2 have come in and they've improved as an individual. They've all went on to improve their own individual stock. Yeah. So I think from an outsider's point of view, from a player's point of view, why wouldn't you want to come and work for somebody like Eddie Howe and the coaching team? And it's not just Eddie Howe. He's got a good team around him. Jason Tyndall's a good coach. Graham Jones is very highly thought of as well. He's been in and around England as well. So I just think that I'm very happy with the business that he's done, and I can't wait when we're at home to Wolves. And as the season progresses, when the players get embedded into Howe's training system and what he does and what he likes, because we know that he tends to phase the foreign players in gradually. And apart from the obvious one, I'm pleased with the window. I'm excited for the season, and let's have it.
A great
Yeah,
point
no,
to
fair.
make that.
Great.
An absolutely brilliant point to make. Because football players aren't stupid. They watch a lot of football. They take a lot of football in. If they're in Germany, Italy, they'll be watching the Premier League. They'll be seeing what Newcastle have done. They'll have seen what happened down at Wembley in March. They'll have seen Newcastle make the Champions League twice. They'll have seen the likes of your Jacob Murphys, your Joe Lintons, your Tino Livramentos, your Lewis Halls go on and make real household names of themselves. It's a huge attraction to. I know Voldemort referenced St James's, and of course, we all know that St James's Park is going to be a huge draw. That ridiculous bear pit atmosphere that we have at St James's Park. But equally, I think there's a lot to be said, as you were saying, Daz, is for a player, especially around the age of Voldemort, who's just turned 23, you know, who is wanting to take his career to like that next level, that kind of better than a potential, whatever the football manager term is for them, but take them up to like a proven centre forward or a proven player. He'll have looked at Eddie Howe's track record with these players. He'll have seen the magic that Eddie has worked with these players. And he'll be thinking, as will Malik Chow, as will Anthony Elanga, as will Jacob Ramsey as well, who, you know, career stalled a little bit at Villa. They'll all look at that and go, we'll have a bit of that. This could be our opportunity to force our way into the England team. This could be our way to force our way into the German national team. You know, it's looking out for themselves, as they have to, but it's also like that perfect storm almost of saying, great that we're going to a club with wonderful fans that can create an atmosphere like that, but even better that we're going to be spending time on a training ground with an absolute magician of a coach like Eddie Howe, both from a training perspective, but also from almost like a parental figure perspective. It's a huge draw. And I don't think people realise outside of Newcastle just how big a draw Eddie Howe has made himself within Newcastle and made Newcastle more attractive club.
I think that's a great point, Andy. And then, I mean, Rob, so what do you sort of agree with that? Do you think Eddie Howe actually is a massive reason for these players who want to actually come to the club? And
100%, yeah. I mean, the one thing that Eddie Howe always says as well, every single transfer window since becoming Newcastle manager, he's always said it's got to be the right player for the right price. And he gets the right players in every single time. He has to know the character of the player, the personality of the player. Are they going to fit into the dressing room with the rest of the team? It's all good for them being absolutely brilliant on the football pitch, but are they going to fit in with the rest of the team? Like I said, are they going to have the right personality to slot straight in? And Eddie Howe identifies that and goes for those players that he knows are going to hit that criteria. Absolutely, 100%. He knows, like Chow last summer, and I know that we were linked with Malik Chow last summer as well. He knows him. He chases players for a long, long time. He doesn't, like Daz touched on there, he doesn't just buy a player for no reason. He has a purpose behind it. He doesn't just buy players just because they're good at football, just because other teams are after them. He has a purpose, and he knows the players inside out before they've even signed for the club. And I think that's just testament as to how great of a, not just a manager, but as a coach and as a mentor to those players as well.
It's something that I kind of like know, like obviously in terms of my job, speaking to the players on a weekly basis, and it's incredible to see that, Rob. Like they're all different personalities. They're not the same personality, but they're so well meshed together. They are so well meshed together. Like I usually end up asking some random crap, to be honest. It would make no sense. Do I preview the game at the weekend? No. But do I ask Tino Livramento what he thinks of Dan Burns' golf swing? Bloody right, I do.
Well, of course. I mean, it was absolutely embarrassing golf swing. What on earth was that?
He was using a child's golf club, in fact.
Embarrassing.
Okay, right. Fair enough.
But it's one of those where, like, I'll ask them about the other players, and they always kind of smile about it. And players can kind of pretend that they get along with each other, and you can almost see straight through that. At Newcastle, you have this sort of camaraderie, this togetherness in that dressing room that you don't see many other clubs. And what you were saying there, Rob, in terms of like, you know, how Eddie almost looks at their ability on the pitch, but also looks at their ability off the pitch. He ain't going to want to bring a bad egg, so to speak, to use a well-worn phrase, into the dressing room. He wants someone to come in who is literally just going to hit the ground running and not be best mates with everyone, but just get along with everyone off the pitch as well. It's become a really fundamental part. A manager the other day talked about pillars of identity. A pillar of identity at Newcastle is very much the personality of the players and how well they fit in together. And I think you can see that in games like the Liverpool one. You can see that in the way that they fight, not for the crowd, they're fighting for each other there. They're backing each other up no matter what. Whatever happens, they're there for each other. And that goes back to how they spend time around each other on the training ground. And Eddie has just got that down. And the coaching staff, JT, Graham, when he's not complimenting people's genes, like all of that sort of stuff. It's one of those that's a really big part of Newcastle United at the minute.
Totally, mate. No.
Fascinating.
I mean, as a Newcastle fan, I think it's one of the most likable teams I think we've possibly had. Because I think you would hate playing against us, and most other fans do hate playing against us because these guys want to win every single game. They're not here to. I don't feel like they're here just to as a stepping stone and then move on. So that makes every single game we watch. You feel like they're giving it everything all the time. And I think that's all we ever wanted to see, really. Unfortunately, you did mention bad eggs. And we can't really assess the Newcastle transfer window without kind of talking about Alexander Isak, who was about to join
Matt Target there, but I was
130 million pounds.
Back from Korea, it's
yeah,
fine.
Matt Target's not a bad egg. He got left in Korea, but he's not a bad egg. Come on, lads.
Can I just point out that the players are that hilarious? Like,
no, the Matt Target thing. Oh, yeah.
Amazing players do see what we don't see, and so many of them I was chatting to them on Media Access Day. It was just like, oh, you made it back from Korea, all right. And so many of them are like, Matty Target's here will be surprised,
that was hilarious, and the amount of people who fell for it as well was even better. So it's one of those things. But unfortunately, look, we have got to mention Alexander Isak, and he is going to join Liverpool unless he fails his medical. But he's going to join Liverpool.
Can you imagine?
Now he's gone, lads. His injury record's terrible anyway, so yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but
what I want to know is which one of you has put the sheet at St James's Park.
Ah, well, yeah.
I'm not in the country. Couldn't have been me.
I'm going to say Rob.
He's got his.
Rob's done it. Yeah, Rob's. I mean, Whistler did the same thing, by the way. We'll get onto that as well. But we have got look. So ultimately for Newcastle, look, we'll get into it. But for Isak, it's a British transfer record. It's 130 million pounds. I think Liverpool are saying they're playing 125 million, and there's 5 million in a solidarity payment or whatever. Whatever way you look at it, he's gone. He didn't want to be there anymore. Newcastle, either way, he's kind of won in the sense of that he's managed to chop off some of his transfer value. Equally, it probably is the best thing for the club. So, Tig, what is your opinion on the Isak situation? Like, I don't know. Are you just pleased he's gone now? And is it a case of, look, we just need to move on. It's finished. That's it.
I mean, yeah, like a British transfer record, it can't be snuffed at. And I think the initial 110 offer was more of a setup than a real offer, because then they held out for so long and they bid the 125 or 130 or whatever, on deadline day. The club are just going to be like, right, okay, it's not getting better than this. It's still a British transfer record. It's close enough to what we're looking for. Take it, be done. Best of luck. Go and get Wissa. We have the other striker in. I think everything considered and taken in, I think the club handled it extremely well. And I think they did the best with the situation of what they could have done. I think Howe has been extremely professional through all of it. I've gained so much more respect from them previously, which I didn't even think was possible. But here we are. But just the way he's handled himself, he hasn't spoken a single ill word of Isak. He's been kind. He's been ready to reintegrate him in case it was agent drama, which we now know it isn't. But I think getting him gone, getting the money, and then obviously, the 3 curse letters, PSR, shouldn't hear about them ever again. Hopefully.
Well, until a couple of years.
60.
I want to be fair. This is our Coutinho moment. Liverpool fans have been spending Coutinho's transfer fee for the last 10 years. We can do that with the Isak money now, and we actually got more than that for Coutinho. So
I'll be saying Isak money while I'm on my pension. I'll be claiming my pension's the fucking bloody Isak money. I'll be like, yeah, it's the Isak money there, lads.
It's still the Isak money, lads. Still the Isak money, yeah. Exactly. No, Andy, I mean, yeah, is it just a case of it was just the best thing in the end for Newcastle to move on? And what I will say is I thought the way Eddie Howe has dealt with it, as Teague mentioned, absolutely incredible. From the first moment where he didn't play against Celtic to all the way up to the press conference before Leeds. No, at any point did he throw him under the bus. He left the door open at every single opportunity for Isak to come back into the squad. And ultimately, I felt like the respect for Eddie Howe has gone up, certainly around the other parts of football as well as even gone up even more because of the way he's dealt with it. And that's one thing I'll take away from this saga.
I think the best thing I can say about it is you wouldn't expect anything less at this stage.
No.
From Eddie Howe, would you?
No.
Yeah.
Like it's become the norm. It's become the standard. And I think for a Newcastle United manager to treat a player like Alexander Isak, who has kind of taken the decisions that he has, gone down the route that he has, and to treat him with that level of respect, I think just sums Eddie Howe. I put a tweet out ages ago, probably about a month or so about this, and just said it is one of those situations which could have been dealt with so badly. And you know what? Whatever decision would have been taken, it could have really blown up on the Newcastle side of things. But while Eddie Howe deserves great praise for facing up to the media questions, which the media have to ask, of course, every single week and every single press conference and every single match, I think the other thing that he deserves great credit for with regards to this is keeping the rest of the squad shielded from it and keeping the rest of the squad as harmonious as they have been, which led them obviously to the Carabao Cup last season and the Champions League. He's been kind of spinning so many plates over the last 2 or 3 months as Eddie in terms of the recruitment, in terms of the Alexander Isak situation, in terms of preparing the team for the season, in terms of integrating the new signings, all of that you just think, you know what? I thought it to myself the other day, I was chatting to Rebecca about it upstairs, and I said, the best thing I can say about Eddie is that I don't think any Newcastle United fan would expect anything less from the man. Look, It's been a really difficult summer, hasn't it? And I'll be honest with you, I think Eddie, like a lot of us, will be quite happy not to hear the name Alexander Isak around. I know personally, from my perspective, I've heard the name so many times. I've got nightmares about it. And you know it's
until we draw them in the third round of the FA Cup at St James's Park.
Bring it on! Bring it on!
He'll have a niggle. He'll be missing.
Yeah,
that's a January problem. That's a January problem. That ain't a September problem. Like, we don't need to worry about that until then, and then we can do whatever happens at St James's. But yeah, I think, look, from second one, I think it's been well documented that Alex probably hasn't gone about this the right way. I think maybe if he could have his time back, I think he'd probably do it a lot differently. And I you know what my overriding emotion is now? I feel a little bit sad because the bloke's gone and scored what turned out to be a winning goal in the first major trophy won in 70 years for Newcastle United. He had the opportunity to be a Newcastle United legend. Let's not get away from the fact that Alexander Isak, when fit, is a world-class striker. I said it numerous times last season, and regardless of what has happened this summer, Alexander Isak remains a world-class striker, and Liverpool are getting a world-class striker, which scares me a little bit. But it is what it is.
Is he going to play ahead of Ekitike, though?
Well, this is it.
You don't spend 130 million and put him on the bench. Like, he might be on the bench initially because he's not fit, which is his choice, by the way. He's damaged himself, by the way, as well, going into this season, because he's decided to play no pre-season and just train on his own. So it's going to take him a while to get up to speed, to be fair.
It's
but
just
no way he doesn't start.
It sets to me, lads, a very worrying precedent. Speaking widely in football now, where players, and Alex, I won't in my position start slagging him off or anything like that. Look, Alexander Isak will be a Liverpool player. That's absolutely fine. Okay, it's what's done is done. I know Eddie's attitude is very much Alexander Isak was a Newcastle United player. Now Alexander Isak isn't a Newcastle United player, and I want to focus on the players who want to be here and want to do the job for Newcastle United and wear the badge with pride. And that's exactly where I stand. I kind of look at it as in, look, he's gone, he's done, what's done is done. But you can't get away from the fact that this has been handled very, very badly, and this is seeping into the world of football now. And this is the danger that social media kind of carries, where it's great that it gives people voices, but at the same time, to try and force a move out from a club and to effectively go on strike, it's not ideal.
So contract as well, not just a year, Andy. we're talking 3 years left of your contract that you agreed upon loyally.
Yeah.
3 years earlier.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm sad. That's why I'm sad, because the lad had a real platform to kind of go and maybe be at Newcastle for another year or two, or even if he turned around at the start of the summer and just handed in a transfer request and said, look, I want to move to Liverpool. That's it. Look, do we know exactly what's happened behind the scenes? No, certainly I don't. I know there's a lot of people who have reported on this, but I'm certainly not one of those journalists. I'm not going to prevaricate and guess here. But I just can't get away from that nagging feeling that Alex could have done so much at Newcastle United. Going to the Premier League champions and one of the best sides in Europe, I don't think any Newcastle fan would begrudge him necessarily to go ahead and do that, because it's a great opportunity for him. But just in the way that it's been handled, and to treat the club and the fans like that, I just feel a little bit sad that it's ended in that manner, rather than remembering Alexander Isak for what he was at Newcastle in his several years here, which was a great goal scorer, a really nice lad to talk to off the pitch as well, and someone who could have really made his name in Newcastle United history. It's still there, of course it is, but obviously it's been tarnished with the way it's ended.
No, I mean, look, just under 6 months ago, he scored the winner in the cup final, and I think, you know, I could have seen him. I didn't think he'd leave in the summer anyway, but initially I thought, if he does leave, this would never happen. And I don't know about Daz, if you thought the same thing. Like, he never struck me as that type of bloke at all. Like, yeah, he wasn't like maybe like a Bruno or a Joe Linton where he's like all passion and all whatever, but he seemed like a very chill, calm guy who, you know, I didn't think he would kick up a fuss and do this. I mean, he's essentially damaged, certainly the start of the season. If Newcastle had Isak for all 3 of these games and played as well as they did in certainly the first 2, Newcastle would have had 2 wins. So you know, is that more the thing? Is it more the weight? Is it just like you didn't expect this from him, and then the weight's just gone on and on and on? It's just dragged us through the mud, really.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's tainted his reputation, because he'll always be remembered, as you said earlier, Andy, that he scored what turned out to be the winner. He scored some really important goals, and without his goals last season, we don't finish in the Champions League, which helps us push on further as a club. And what he'd done previously as well, it has tainted his reputation amongst the fans, with myself. But he's also brought us so much joy. I remember being there at the trophy parade, stood outside St James's Park with my 2 boys, and my youngest Max was 10, and he just turned around to me at one moment, and he was just like, Dad, Alex Isaacs just looked at me and waved at me, and just the pure joy on a little 10-year-old's face, as a parent, as a fan, was just amazing, and I'll never forget. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that moment now. Yeah. It's slightly upsetting that it's went the way that it's gone. And we had this discussion previously, Jack, and obviously Rob on the previous pod. Yeah. I thought he would go. I thought after everything that had went, I thought that he would go. And I think that, I don't know if it's been a case of we've accepted a fee which was slightly less than what we put out there that we would accept, because of maybe Eddie and maybe the players have maybe come together and go, right, we need to focus on us. We need to focus on the players that, as Joe Linton's wife put out there, want to play for the badge, that want to be with us. Let him go. And there's obviously talks of that he's gave up a loyalty bonus and all that sort of stuff. So we've accepted a slightly less fee, but who knows about that? I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely tainted his reputation for me. I thought he'd go. I thought he'd potentially go at the end of the next season before this drama started. But we are where we are. We've got Voltemada in and Visser, who scored more goals than what he did combined last season as a pairing. So let's just focus on the players that we've got in. And
they're great points to make as well, Dad. And I'll lead on to one other thing that I was going to say. That Newcastle have come out of this situation as good as they possibly could. I think we've talked about the respect for Eddie, and I think people outside of Newcastle have seen that now, which is great. I think they would have expected that anyway of Eddie Howe to deal with it in the manner that he has. But moving on to like what the club have done in the transfer market, while this Alexander Isak situation has been going on, I think that shines a light on the excellent work that people are doing behind the scenes, regardless of what happened with Alexander. Obviously, the Wissa situation has gone literally down to the wire and past the 7 p.m. deadline, and now towards the deal sheets and everything like that. But that was always going to with Brentford. But I think if we are to look at it in the cold light of day, and just, even though it's a very, very difficult thing to do, to kind of step away from the emotion of the situation of how Alex has maybe handled this alongside his representatives, I think you kind of take a step back and go, right, let's tick them off. 130 million, like we've all said, is that the 150 million valuation? No, I think if Florian Wirtz is going to Liverpool for 110, 115 million, I think Alexander Isak is probably worth above 150 million when you score 20 plus goals in the Premier League for back-to-back seasons. But 130 million is nothing to be sniffed at, most certainly. You've got an unhappy player in the squad that you've now offloaded that would have dragged throughout the season. Imagine if Newcastle had held on to Alexander Isak, as is their right, if they would have done that, and if they'd literally had dragged him, like kept him in there against his will, so to speak. And this would have been every press conference, every match, every interview, everything like that. And it just would have put a dark spot on the entire season. I think it really needs to be looked at in the cold light of day. The PSR headroom's being created. You've got an unhappy player off the books, and now Eddie and the coaching staff can concentrate on the players that they do have who want to be there, obviously, and we can move on from this horrible situation and worry about PSR in 2 years. We've got some great players in. Voldemar that I genuinely think is going to be a superstar. I genuinely think Voldemar has got something about him, from what I've been told, from scouts, from people in the know in Germany far more than I am. They have told me that he's a big, big, big prospect, and someone like Eddie will get the best out of him. So I think from my perspective, and I totally understand the fans' anger, I totally understand the fans, the bed sheets and everything. I understand the names being called and everything. But from my perspective, obviously in my position, I'm just like, look, it's done. They're football players. They move on. We've got the best out of a bad situation. Let's move on now. We're in September.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to finish the Isak thing, certainly. I think let's have a quick go around the room. Quick rating for the window, I suppose. Taking everything into account, just a little explanation for why. So, Andy, what are you giving out of 10? Rating window.
I was hoping you cut me last there. I was like, literally, if you ask me this straight up, I'm going to be like, oh, no.
All right, you can have a think. You can have a think. You can have a think. Go on then. Tig, what do you reckon for the window? Out of 10.
Yeah, so I would have said probably an 8. And I really appreciate one thing I wanted to touch on earlier, I didn't get a chance to, is the switch up between kind of June and July and then into August. Because June and July, we were getting into bidding wars with Man City and Liverpool and United and Chelsea. And then August 1st completely switched to under the radar, done in a day, 2-day players, which is what the club where it is now was built on. I mean, Guimaraes, Tonali, Isak, Botman, all the smoke shows out of nowhere, bang. No one knew they were coming. Not many would have known who they were. I mean, obviously, Alanga dragged out. That was its own thing. But, like, Ramsey, like, he's looked very good, and there was no one really in for him. It happened within, just a day, 2 days. It wasn't a big story. So I appreciate the change up back to how things were, which is what I was advocating for since the start of the summer. So I'll go 8 out of 10.
Right, that's fair. 8 out of 10. Rob, what are you going to go for?
I was going to say the same. I was going to say probably like a solid 8, 8.5. I think, like I said on the last podcast, we've addressed all the positions of weakness that, not weakness, but you know what I mean. Like we've addressed the positions that needed strengthening.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Right winger, that was addressed straight away. Bringing in a centre midfielder and Jacob Ramsey, bringing in another goalkeeper. In Ramsey. So I think we've addressed all the positions that the fans have been. Is massive. And I think as well, if you're comparing the strikers that we had last season compared to this season, I think Wissa is a massive upgrade on Callum Wilson. I love Callum Wilson. I love what he did for the club. And injuries did ruin his Newcastle career, unfortunately. But I think Wissa is an upgrade on Wilson. And I think Voldemar has got a very high ceiling that could potentially turn out to be an upgrade on Isak as well. So I think we are potentially stronger than what we were last season. And hopefully come January, come next summer, there's none of this camaraderie anymore. There's none of this drama ever again, and we continue to strengthen. But like I said, I think a solid 8.5. Solid 8.5 for this transfer window. I think we've really strengthened what we've needed to. And I think we've got a really good squad. We've always had a good starting 11. We've always had a good team. But I think the bench has always been our weakness, our depth of the squad. But I think even looking at the bench in the first 3 games, I think it looks good. We've got options to come off the bench. And I think that's what we've needed for the last couple of seasons, especially in a season where we're going to be playing 50+ games as well. I think it's positive. I think really happy. Yeah.
Daz, what are you going for?
So I'm a bit of a tough grader personally.
All right.
I'm going to go with a 7. And reasons being, I think if you look at a couple of the outgoings we've got, I think obviously Target leaving as well. I think it leaves us a little bit short of cover at left back. I would have liked to have seen potentially another left back come in, because I think we lose if Hall does go down. Tino was brilliant at left back, but I'm not sure on the other options at right back. Personally, I think you take something away from Tino and Hall. I think that they could potentially be England's next full-back pairing for the next 5-6 years. And I think I would have ideally liked a creative central midfielder, because I think teams are getting around Bruno a little bit more. He's not blessed with elite athleticism.
No, it's not.
So
it covers every bit.
As proven last season, he runs more than anybody. But it's one of those where I think that if teams can get around him, Tonali and Big Joe do so much of the donkey work, and Tonali is technically better than Joe. I'm hoping Ramsey's going to be that link, that attacking link, because I think he gets in between the lines superbly well. And I think once he gets into Howe's system, hopefully his ankle roll wasn't too bad at Leeds the other day. But I think for me, I think it's got to be a 7. I would have liked another couple of additions, and personally, potentially another couple of outgoings as well. But I would have liked to maybe seen Miley go out on loan somewhere, so he can play a full season. I think he needs that at his age. I don't think he's going to get that with us this season. I think for his progression within Newcastle itself, it would have suited him better to go to a top-end championship, potentially lower-end Premier League team to play a full season. So I'm going to go with a solid 7.
That's fair play, you know. I'll go first now, then go Andy. So I'm going to give it 8.
I'm just saying I'm kind of marking my work at university, to be honest with you. Wouldn't have got anywhere.
No, Daz was not in any of that, like 7. I'll go an 8, because I think ultimately Newcastle have addressed all of the key areas, etc. The outgoings were good. I feel like got rid of a lot of players who probably didn't have a future anymore. Look, Sean Longstaff was a brilliant servant for Newcastle, but was he at the level we required anymore? Probably not. Did have a very good game on Saturday, to be fair, which I kind of knew he would. But equally, it was probably time for Sean Longstaff to go. Several of the other players as well, like Target, etc. as well. The James Trafford deal disappointed me. Feel like Newcastle totally messed that up. You know, they had so long to try and get that deal done. In the end, Aaron Ramsdale for me is a short-term solution. And even then, Nick Pope is still probably better at him in some areas of play. So we're going to have to see what happens there. So the goalkeeper situation is probably the only one. It's a little bit disappointing. So I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Ultimately, though, look, it could have been so much worse. And in the end, we're in a much better position than we were last year, when Newcastle easily had the worst transfer window of any Premier League team, by the way. Last summer was terrible. And it doesn't get talked about enough how good the season was from Eddie Howe, etc., to win a trophy and get in the Champions League, when the transfer window, they didn't back him at all. So the difference this summer, night and day. And look, let's just see what happens. But I'm feeling good, to be fair. Andy?
You've literally just led me perfectly into the point I was going to make there, Jack, in the sense that it had been how many transfer windows since Newcastle had made a first-team signing? And I think every single person in the city and out of the city, any Newcastle fan was like, oh my God, we can't have another one. And you're right, it doesn't get talked about how poor. I suppose the transfer window was, how disappointing and frustrating the transfer window was last summer. And then for Newcastle to go and do what they did last season. So what the heck are they going to do this season once they start getting up and running with the players that they've added? Look, I'm the other side of Daz. I'm a generous marker. I do a bit of lecturing at the university. And I'm sure if any one of my students are listening to this, they'll be like, "Oh, great! He is a generous marker. Fantastic."
Just send the work to me, Andy. I'll mark it down for you.
Mate, that's fine. I'm quite happy to pass my marking on to someone else.
Someone else do the marking, yeah. Leave it.
I'm gonna give it a 9. I'm
Fair
gonna give it a 9, and I'll explain my reasoning for it. One, because I haven't seen a better Newcastle United squad for a couple of reasons for this in quite some time. I can't remember who. I think Rob, you were talking about it there in terms of the options now that Newcastle United have off the bench. It's not even just the quality of the player; it's the kind of skill set that they're bringing. Every single one of them, seemingly now, I was looking through the squad the other day, bring a different sort of skill set to that side. Jacob Ramsey isn't the same as Joe Linton, who isn't the same as Tonali, who isn't the same as Bruno, who isn't the same as Miley in midfield. Take your point completely on board about left back. I feel like there might be a little bit of trouble there, but Tino's resilience and Tino's versatility probably gets Newcastle United out of a jam there. I haven't seen too many better fullbacks than him in quite some time, to be honest with you. But
he's absolutely.
Hopefully he can continue on like his progression. So I think from a squad perspective and the subs now that Newcastle are going to be able to bring off the bench and then rotate, fighting on all four fronts, I think the additions of your Chow now, where you look at Dan Burn and Fabian Schär have not done much, if anything, wrong this season. I don't think they've done much wrong over the last year or almost in the sense of being at centre-backs. So Sven Botman and Malik Chow have a real fight on the hands to displace them out of the team. If they do, you've got Sven Botman and Malik Chow to bring in at centre-back. And then you've got Jamal Lascelles, of course, who probably will try and get himself a few games this season if injury prevents it. So you've got good depth there. Goalkeeper, obviously, you've got Pope and Ramsdale fighting out. Totally take your point on board about Aaron Ramsdale being probably a short-term option. Everyone knew James Trafford was the number one option. Of course, that didn't quite materialise. And look how that's ended up at Manchester City with Donnarumma going there, but less said the better. And then I think up front, I think we've got really good options on the wings. I think everyone's talking about Anthony Elanga and Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon. Can we just remember that Jacob Murphy had an absolutely cracking season last season? And yes, I'm not saying he's going to produce 20 goals and 20 assists or anything like that, but this strength in depth there. Then you throw in Johan Wissler. Then you throw in Nick Voltemade, who is going to take a little bit of time, but he will get in there. And I think from that squad perspective, it's got most things that Newcastle would have needed. The one thing it is missing, and I'm with you on this, Daz, I think they would have ideally, to make it a 10 out of 10 window, liked more of a front-footed attacking midfielder. I know that there was David Fratesi from Inter Milan that was being linked quite heavily in the sense of that, but I think there was just one position short. And I think, you know how we've talked for the last 2 seasons about strengthening right centre-back. We've talked about strengthening right wing. We've talked about strengthening in goal, maybe. Whatever else it is, I think that's the next position that Newcastle United really need to look at properly and try and bring in a creative midfielder. But that aside, and given everything that has happened with the saga, with the striking saga this summer, and the work that the team have done off the pitch to kind of drag in those several signings that they have, I think Newcastle at a 9 out of 10 window. I think it's a very, very impressive window. And I think also it gives them plenty of room to manoeuvre in January, if necessary. It's not a great market in January, but certainly next summer as well, if they can make Champions League again and then kick on to the next level. So, yeah, I waited. I listened to all of your reasoning. I stayed on the fence comfortably and then just drew an average out of what you guys said. And I've come up with 9, I'm afraid.
That's fair play. No.
Wait to see what does.
No, well, what a class.
We'll hold you to that, Andy, come the end of January.
Sorry, say again.
We'll hold you to that at the end till the end of January.
I came up with a journalist on. I'll say this before, if you are wanting to finish up.
Yeah, no,
I appreciate that. I had a disagreement with a journalist. It's at a stadium in the Premier League on Saturday, which I'm sure I can't mention on this podcast. But I won't say what journalists get along with him very, very well, but it's not fair admitting them. And he comes over and he says to me, "This Nick Voltemade, don't make much of him. I don't make much of him at all. I'm not sure if he's the right one." And I immediately was like, listen, every single person I've spoken to in German football has told me that this lad is the real deal. Like, he's an absolute unicorn of a player who's got like these attributes that will slot perfectly into Newcastle United's team and dressing room as a personality. And I'm willing to go with them as well. So I'm going to stand by the people who've told me about Nick Voltemade and from what I've seen of him as well over the summer and last season. And I'm going to stick with that. So, yeah, Daz, come back to me at the end of January if Nick has still one goal scored against Hull on his debut. And you come back to me at that.
I'm going to be honest, come the end of January, if we're in the Champions League, if we're still in the Champions League and we're in the race for the next season's Champions League, I'm going to a 10.
Sack the 7 off.
Yeah, sack the 7 off.
I want for all your students to be coming back to you and be like, can you not focus on that? Oh, go on then, I'll give you an extra mark.
Go on then, why not?
But just the one final point I did want to make, folks, is the best signing that Newcastle United ever made happened way back when Eddie Howe signed on that dotted line.
100%.
He is still the best person at that club. He is still the best thing about Newcastle United right now. And honest to God, the longer that Newcastle keep him, the better the club, the city and the community is going to get, irrespective of players wanting away or players wanting to stay or wanting to join. Eddie Howe's the boy.
Couldn't agree more.
100%. What a great way to end it. Well, lads, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much to Andy for giving up your evening to join us. It's been great to have you on.
Oh, no.
Hope you've all enjoyed it.
I passed up all my mark. It's fine.
Remember to like and subscribe to the NUFC360 podcast. But we'll be back after Newcastle. Well, don't know when we're back actually, but hopefully after Newcastle smash Wolves, we'll be back. So see you later. Have a good one.